Hey, Ben.
Hey, what's up, guys?
Hey, how's it going? You can hear us?
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. Thanks for joining, man.
Oh, absolutely, dude. I do a lot of podcasts, mostly football related. I've been psyched for this. I have no idea what to fucking expect, but
Well, Ben, we could talk football too.
Yeah, we can do anything here, man. We're
It's gotta be
dedicated
the
to
Jets,
Seinfeld, though.
don't change the rundown now, guys. All right.
No, we're all good. All right, all I'm going to do is a quick intro, and then we just kind of jump into it, if that's cool.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, welcome to episode 26 of This Podcast is Making Me Thirsty. Our guest today is Ben Fennell. He is a Drexel alum, Emmy Award-winning producer and editor, researcher with many different media outlets, NFL Network, NFL Films, ESPN College Football, won a National Sports Emmy, and owns a Super Bowl ring for his work with the Eagles. So, welcome, Ben. And more importantly, he's a Seinfeld fan. That's why he's here. That's why we got him. There was a tweet that caught our eye that O'Hara found, my partner there, where you mentioned the 5-second scene that sums up Seinfeld is the rewinding of the tape that George leaves in the briefcase in season 8, episode 2, The Soulmate. The awkward silence during the rewind, which is a great catch. And yeah, I wanted to start off with that, maybe just kind of what about that scene, or is there any other scenes? Is that your favorite episode? Just get us going on your favorite episodes, your favorite seasons, that sort of thing.
Yeah, that scene in particular, I feel like we harp on some other, more layman scenes like the parking garage and Chinese, food episode as the iconic Seinfeld representations. And I just seen that in a syndicated episode, and I just wanted to ask the writer, Peter Melman, about it and how deliberate that was, because it was literally, he said in the actual recording, it was about 12 seconds, which I'm sure feels like an eternity of straight silence, but it's such a Seinfeld thing. Why not have the tape already rewound? It just hit play and go. It's such a Seinfeld moment to sit there in real time and rewind the tape. I just thought it was hilarious.
Yeah,
and Ben, we got to thank you. The tagging Melman, that inspired us. We did the same thing, and he will be a guest on the show next week. So
landed Melman next week. We got him.
That's fantastic. That's great to hear. I've tweeted at him a couple other times to ask him about the origin of certain lines in episodes.
Yeah,
like the one where Newman is Jerry's trying to get Newman's help, and he says, "You really think you can manipulate the beautiful young woman like the half-soused nightclub rabble that lap up your inane observations?" Little lines like that. I need to know who came up with that. Like, I literally need to know the origin. Like, who came up with that? Was that Wayne Knight? Was that Seinfeld? Was that you, Melman? There's little lines like that through the series that I was like, who came up with that? Like when Kramer says they went at the beak man, he tried to land and they cheesed him. Who came up with that line? Like, I have little moments like that where I need to ask somebody, where did this come from?
Ben, and we're gonna ask him some of that. Those are great lines. Mine are just more simple, like, "Hey, she's got a great body, buddy." Like, was that you, Melman?
Ben, just hearing you breaking down. Sorry, go ahead. All right, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no. So just back to the tweet. I think the more impressive part was Seinfeld actually retweeted it. What did that add a ton of followers? Like, what was that kind of?
No, not really. That's actually my second Seinfeld retweet.
Get out of here.
Yeah, so I was a little desensitized to the second one. The first one was, I don't remember what he said, but I just gave the line that he referenced in the episode. Then we'll see what it's like up there without all the assistants. One of his famous Buddy Rich lines that he's worked into the show. And I know there's a couple lines that are dear to his heart that I know how to trigger him. So I said that to him, and he retweeted it almost instantly. This one was like almost a week later, so it was kind of interesting to see it get churned back up a couple days later.
Ben, I'm noticing a trend here. I've since we found you, I've been following your Twitter, and your breakdown on those films is incredible. I don't know if any of you guys are listening. Check out Ben on Twitter. He has all these breakdowns of NFL games and highlights, who to look for. And now I see your analytical mind at work with these Seinfeld episodes. I'm assuming you really are gonna be breaking down some stuff for us here on these episodes, because that's what we do. We love diving deep. Yeah, I would say, the fact that you picked the rewinding of the tape is you're right, because some of the more well-known scenes as the one to sum up the episode. I was trying to think of some when I read yours, but mine would all have to do with all 4 of them, I guess, would be I don't know the reason, but when did you get into the show? That's kind of our first question. You're a few years younger than us. Are you 33? Is that right?
33 years old.
Yeah. So you
my mom
really
was
didn't get until reruns,
yeah, my
right?
mom was an avid watcher in the early 90s. Obviously, right in the heyday of the show. I'm only 8, 10, 12 years old. So probably season 7, 8, 9. I started to watch it as it came out and Must See Thursday on NBC, which seemed like that was life back then. To watch Frasier and Friends and News Radio and that whole lineup. And then I was never, this is kind of a weird thing to say, but I've never been a religious guy. I've never come from a religious family. And I really took his show and his way of life and perspectives as almost like a religious appreciation for how he just views life and observations and talking to people. And I just found the show to be so clever. I love the personalities of it. I just loved smart humor. I love things that you have to know things in order to understand the joke. And as you become more educated, as I get older and older, and I watch episodes in syndication, things finally are triggering. Like, that's what he meant. That's who that is. And I love that sometimes it's over people's head, but you have to have some knowledge and I don't want to say academia, but there's some background you have to bring into it in order to get it. And that's smart comedy. And I love that.
It's funny. I didn't know where you were going with the religious piece. I thought you were going to tell us you were Latvian Orthodox, but
are they the ones that go around mutilating squirrels?
Exactly. So it's funny you brought up obviously that 5-second. That's late Seinfeld. So we've analyzed every season, and I think to your point, right? Like, it's the small moments that capture the show, and what we've had. Again, this is the Mount Rushmore show, so when we say it's a problem, it's minuscule. But the later seasons, we feel like there's just some gimmicky episodes. Like even Yada Yada was a good show, but the whole concept of Yada Yada, no soup for you, for us, it kind of took away the core value of the show and the subtleties of the show. Just those gimmicky pieces just to grab the attention of the crowd. I'm curious what your thoughts are on early Seinfeld, let's say seasons 2 through 5, where Tom Chirones is the director and just does a fabulous job. And then the later years where kind of Larry kind of takes his foot off the pedal a little bit and lets others kind of do their thing. Do you view it as two different shows?
Not as I guess as raw as maybe you're presenting it, but I feel like they hit such home runs in some of those early episodes with the pop culture stuff, whether it's the junior mints or the lines and the contests, that they were a little aggressive in trying to recapture some of those hot button pop culture words they're putting in society, or maybe a offbeat product. It seemed like they were a little more gimmicky, but a lot of my favorite episodes almost strictly come out of seasons 8 and 9. So it's funny that you say that, because I feel like the show started to grow a little bit more organically in those later seasons, particularly 7, 8, and 9. That's when they let different characters kind of work together, whether it's Kramer and Elaine in the Meat Slicer, Kramer and Elaine doing Punta Mayo, or Kramer and George doing photo shoots. You never had those side characters working together in the earlier episodes. So my favorite episode has always been Serenity Now. And then, the other ones off of that, the Van B Boys and Dealership and the Slicer and Merv Griffin Show, Frogger, they're all the later episodes. I just feel like probably my top 20, I want to say 18 of them are probably in those last 3 seasons.
Wow, that's why the show's great. That's why the show's great. You got different views.
That is why the show's great. Everyone comes at it from different perspectives.
Yeah.
I mean, listen, similar to analyzing like an NFL quarterback, right, Ben? You may think Wentz looks great, but we may see it in a different light.
There's a lot of different ways to look at it, a lot of moving parts and a lot of different perspectives. But just to let you know, my one episode from the earlier chunk that has always been near and dear, and is probably the one that would slip into the top 10, is The Library with Bookman. That one has always been one of my early episode favorites. But traditionally, if I'm watching in syndication, it'll get my eyes and attention for the whole half hour if it's somewhere in the later episodes.
It's funny, you mentioned the Dealership and I think the Mayan one. We have that ranked 168 and 167 respectively.
So, those are our least favorite. But hey, to each their own, right? That's what we're talking about here. What's interesting though, and as you were talking about that, there is an Elaine Kramer combo that's great. Is you know, when she's dating the therapist and she has to then pretend she's dating Kramer.
That's
it's a
right.
small Elaine Kramer, but you're right. There wasn't a lot of Elaine Kramer early on. And we always do. That's one of the questions we asked Al Dukes when we had him on is which combo you like the best. You know, when they put them together. Sort of, I like the George Kramer, you know, from the dinner party, the airport, you know, a few others, but that's an interesting question we like to ask. Like, what is your sort of your favorite combo when they put two people together?
Yeah, that's a really good question. They're so few and far between that, like, I think of a flash of one. I'm just trying to think if it's recurred enough. And maybe the Kramer and Morty Seinfeld connection has always been really fun.
Raincoats, yep,
Yeah,
that's a good
particularly
one.
when he goes down and runs for the condo board president.
That's a good one.
You know, they were never around each other a whole lot, but I just love those kind of later interactions with the other characters.
So speaking of the other characters, right? So I think the beauty of this show is the secondary characters and the like just the massive part they play.
No question.
So give us a little sense of, you mentioned Bookman already, but any others that stand out that you just love, and when you flip by, obviously you never turn on the channel, but that you really lock in on?
Yeah, two that are very close to my heart and that I just think the same way as they do, and that's Putty and Peterman. Just their Putty's obviously just dumbness and dullness. It just was a great kind of vibe to the show. And then Peterman's just outlandish lines and some of the wild things that he said. Like, there's some things you literally have to read what he said aloud because it's just so outlandish that you don't really appreciate just hearing the audio of. But Peterman and Putty are probably two of the more recurring characters that I appreciate outside of the landmark ones like Newman and some guys like that.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, again, not two of our favorite. I mean, Peterman had some great lines. I love his, that was gibberish when he's out and when Elaine tracks him down. I had another thing I wanted to say. When you touched on before, it was really interesting about the, you laughed even when you didn't know what they were talking about. And then you know, you educated yourself. I mean, there are so many things that went over my head that I just remember that one with the, when all the waitresses had big breasts, and he said it's like a Russ Meyer film in here.
Right.
So you just laugh. You assume you know from the context, but you don't know who Russ Meyer is.
Or like Uncle Leo accusing the cook to be an anti-Semite. He's like, hey,
Yeah.
before Goebbels made your sandwich here.
Yes.
Like, it took me years before I knew who Goebbels was.
Yeah.
Like, you know, there's a lot of lines like that, or whether it's Caligula or Yo-Yo Ma or Ceausescu, and there's a bunch of like historical figures throughout the show. If you're watching as a 12-year-old, there's no way you get it. And
Right.
It's a little more drastic to go into like the Dennis Miller level of comedy. But so many people criticized him on Monday Night Football because they didn't get it. And if I'm convinced the people that don't like Seinfeld don't get Seinfeld. And I don't mean to attack intelligence, but there's a lot of background knowledge you have to bring to get his jokes. And I think that's the genius of it.
I agree. I had a writing course once in college, and one of the things, if you put in a reference, there's a fine line between, is everyone going to get how small how weird that reference is or obscure. But I love those kind of references. If you don't get it, you're writing it for yourself almost at that point. You're like, if 3 people laugh at this because they understand what I'm saying, then it's a great reference. But yeah, I show my daughter episode. She's only 8, and she the one with the hair and Jerry gets sick and he goes, the hair in my farina when I was a kid. And she turns to me, she goes, Dad, what's farina? I'm like, I don't even know. I'm still learning stuff. I had to Google farina. I'm like, what is it? I just thought what farina was after that. But
well, speaking of that, so Ben, you were pretty much 8 when you started to watch with your mom, it sounds like, right?
Yeah.
Were there episodes then that stuck out, which really helped you become a fan, and then rewatching them now, do you see them in a different light? So I'll give you an example. Like, one of the episodes that weirdly rubs it the wrong way now as an older man versus then was the the licking the envelopes when Susan died. I don't know why. Just for some reason now I had more of a problem with it than I did then. I'm just curious if there's any shows like that stick out for you. Or
no, I think as a kid, the landmark, Mount Rushmore episodes were big to me then. The seeing the entire show in the lobby of the Chinese food place, or the whole show be done in the parking garage, like that stuck with you. When you're watching other stuff like Friends and Frasier and things like that felt different of a show. So that stuck with me. And then as I started just to get into the show more and more, there are a couple scenes and instances and endings that have really bothered me. If you want to get into some of that conversation, which is always fun. Like
Yes.
particularly,
Please.
I hate the ending of the episode where Kramer wins the money at the racetrack and the blind violinist posing as the cop saves the day.
I agree. That's the only episode that I can think of, and O'Hara, maybe correct me if I'm wrong, that's a happy ending, right? That's
Yes, and
why
it
you hate
ends
it.
with like a crowd, a
Yes.
studio
It very
audience
well could
clapping.
it could very well be the only happy ending episode.
And you know what I've thought of since then, and I haven't looked it up, and I don't know why. I'm assuming that happened in real life. I'm assuming there was somebody pretending to be blind on the subway and saved a mugging. Just like the Kramer getting the seizure from Mary Hart on Entertainment Tonight. That was a real thing that happened.
Yeah, they're pulling stuff from real life.
Yeah, I've never looked that up, but the feeling and tone of the ending of that episode has always like rubbed me the wrong way, to the point I just like kind of cringe and tweak at it. Like it's just such a non-Seinfeld way to end the episode.
That's a good point, because
very good point, yeah.
it's the non-hugging rule, and it
Right.
ended on a good note with the clapping.
Because even the statue, he hits him at the end and breaks the statue, to make that it can't be happy when George gets a statue back from Kramer, but then he slaps him and it breaks. There's always that twist at the end.
That payoff at the end, yeah.
Yeah, that's like the only one that had a happy
There's a couple
ending.
cliffhanger ones too, like the girl that wore the same dress. We never found out why. He gets up to her apartment. He sees the photos of her in her apartment wearing the dress. And then she wants him to leave. And he keeps egging her on to go walk me to a cab. Can I sleep over? Walk me out in the morning. We never find out why she wears the same dress all the time. Just like the girl that refused the pie. We never really find out why she shook off the pie in that first instance. There's a couple weird like storylines and plots that never really come to fruition on the backside.
They have to do with Jerry's inquisitive mind. It's Poppy's daughter. All of those have to do with Jerry's inquisitive mind, which I do like. I bring this up almost every episode, but I did a paper on it for my master's degree in library science about information gathering. And Jerry always came from a childlike place. He was always very inquisitive, and that's why he was trying to get information from people. Whereas like George was doing it out of paranoia and trying to that was where he was coming from.
There's also like the genius of the show in that like we create storyline, we don't have to finish it. And that was also why it was kind of different and unique in that, it's not really what the show and the story is about. We don't need to finish that storyline.
Yeah, the only arc was the season 4, right? When they or the pilot one, when they went through the whole pilot, that was an arc too, but they didn't really do much arcs.
So Ben, in your normal world in sports, well, first off, sports plays a big role in Seinfeld. What are some of your favorite sports scenes or sports references on the show? I know it's rare they touch football, right? I think the Joel Rifkin episode is the only one there at Giant Stadium. But any others pop for you?
I do love when Jerry is able to ditch George at the dinner and he sits on the couch right when the Giants are going for it. You gotta love sports, and he gives a fist bump while sitting on the couch. I always think about that a lot. But no, I love the slight tennis episode at the U.S. Open or whatever with the ball girl where he meets her. Obviously, the Orioles Yankees game with Elaine wearing the Yankees cap is a great one. I love just the mention of Kramer getting into the incident courtside at the NBA game. I know you don't really see it, but he kind of just references it. And then we all went out and hung out with Reggie or whatever after the game. Yeah. But a lot of the baseball ones, obviously, the Keith Hernandez being involved and, the spitting episode of the JFK references and things like that. Sports wise, I don't know if anyone's in particular really stand out.
Are you a Philly guy originally? I know you went to Drexel and the Eagles connection.
I grew up in Northeast Pennsylvania in the Poconos.
Okay.
Went to school in Philly, worked at NFL Films in South.
You're a Steeler guy? When you were growing up, you were a Steeler guy?
Actually, my mom grew up in Green Bay, in the 60s. So that got inherited almost immediately.
Got it. So to O'Hara's question then, in that world, as you come across these different athletes and different media types, we were just bouncing off lines to each other, and you're hearing them, you're throwing them right back. That's something we all love to do. Anyone that we would, anyone in particular that you kind of have that affinity with, where you kind of click on the Seinfeld level, they're in the same church, if you will, of Seinfeldism?
Yeah, my best friend growing up, we speak the same language. We kind of follow the same religion, for lack of better words. Um, and it's just a constant, it's like, and that's why I call it religion, because it's a constant way of thinking about things and observing the world and just being enamored with the subtle observations of things. And that's what just trained me to kind of point things out, reference things from the show, and just kind of be more open to the subtleties and quirks of life. But definitely the closest friends of mine have been the ones that we see it the same way traditionally because of Seinfeld.
Steve Sable, big Seinfeld guy. Were you there? Were you at NFL Films?
Yes, I overlapped with him for about 3 or 4 years. I want to say I hung out on 2 or 3 Sundays and watched some games with him. I don't know if he had a Seinfeld affinity. I would be shocked if he didn't. But I cannot say offhand. An avid fan. He has so much memorabilia and stuff around that building. I haven't seen anything Seinfeld related, so I'm not sure if he's a deep fan or not.
Speaking of memorabilia, I think I saw another tweet of yours where you had a bunch of magazines, a la I have one here, yes. The Old Time magazine. We're looking to interview Bruce Handy in a couple.
I actually subbed that one out for his Playboy. I only had 6 frames or spots for 6 of them. I took that Time magazine out for the magazine where he was on the cover of Playboy.
So what are the 6 you have? What
So I have Playboy. I have Entertainment Weekly, where it says Seinfeld Strikes Again. I have Mad TV, where he's in a cartoon. And then 3 Rolling Stones, The Wizard of Oz, the one where he looks like Elvis, and then the one where they're all in like leather grunge.
Interesting. So we all have different ones, which is fascinating. The one I'd love to get actually is the one that the Time magazine George had during the airport episode.
That would be great.
With the criminal, it said
the one piece I really want is I've seen it's in Larry David's office. It's when it's the 4 of them and it's just a single foot of each of them all, and they're all wearing like their traditional shoes. I can't find that anywhere. And Elaine's wearing her dress shoe with the white sock, and
it's just the shoes, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I have that as a cover of a book that David Wilde wrote.
I've seen on Larry David. I don't know if it was in Curb or something like that. I've seen it. It's in his office, and I've looked everywhere for it, eBay, things like that. I cannot find it, but that's been the one piece I'm trying to add. The Playboy magazine was a nice touch. I always just wanted to know what that first call was like when they said they want you for the cover of Playboy, and what his reaction was.
Well, Penthouse had been in the show a few times, so it's interesting that
I just picture him looking down, like at his body, like, okay, I guess I'm going to be on the cover.
He probably dated a few girls who were in there knowing Jerry at that time, I don't know, around the 90s. The NFL Films, man, I did a paper on NFL Films Archive when I was in that library science program, and NFL Films Archive is incredible. How they catalog everything. It's really, really fascinating.
It's a little football museum over there. They don't do like public tours or anything, but I wish they did, because
don't? Yeah, they should.
Any football fan would definitely appreciate all the memorabilia, the pictures. They've done a great job in kind of making that a little football museum.
All right, so let me ask you, Ben, you're a big Packers fan.
Yep.
So they won in what was it, 09, 11?
Yeah, the 09 season, I think the game was played in January or February 2010.
Did you go to that Super Bowl?
I did not.
So let me ask you, would you rather have gone to that Super Bowl or the finale of Seinfeld?
Like taping.
I would probably go to the finale of Seinfeld, to be honest with you. I'm not a rah-rah type of football fan. Like, I don't get excited about like autographs or going to games or anything like that. I'm very desensitized to like the fandom of football. I don't know if it's because it's my career or whatnot. It's also weird that I grew up a lifelong Packers fan. I'm an employee of the Philadelphia Eagles. So it's a very strange kind of dynamic as well. So I really have to temper my fandom as well in public settings. But to answer your question, being at the Super Bowl, the Packers winning, or the Seinfeld finale, I would think the Seinfeld finale might have more weight.
Nice. Well, listen, it's a 2-pager bills, right? It's interesting that you have a little similarity to Jerry there, right? Like, he's a huge Mets fan, but he had to embrace the Yankees probably just for broader reach and the Steinberger character, right? So he kind of did the same thing in a way. which I always find interesting, right? Like Billy Crystal wearing the Met hat, like during City Slickers, right? Like these guys, like the teams they love. Not that you're going against the Packers in that case, but
I heard Ben Affleck held up shooting a Batman because they wanted him to wear a Yankees hat and he refused to.
That's his livelihood. Did you? What did you think of the finale? We both liked it. Against a lot of people have their different opinions on it. I liked it a lot. I thought it was a good way to wrap it up. What are your thoughts on the finale, Seinfeld? What we talking?
I thought it was fantastic. I thought it was a great way to reflect back on previous characters. It was obviously a little strange of a storyline, but I thought it fit, and you weren't going to please everybody. And I think the shock value of it afterwards was like, oh, that's it. It was so much anticipation and so much expectations behind it. That always leaves people disappointed just to be disappointed. But I thought they did a pretty good job. I liked the episode. I liked the recurring characters coming back. There's a lot of great deleted scenes that didn't make it into the episode as well. Yeah, I was okay with it.
You might be the first non-New York, New Jersey native I think that we've had as a guest. And most of the ones we've had have all kind of talked about how the show represents New York and maybe it's to New York. I mean, Pennsylvania, not far, obviously, but apparently, it didn't go over your head. In fact, you stressed about how it was just the opposite as far as the intellect.
They gave goes. a couple Poconos references in there too.
Yeah, it's true. They did. Didn't
honey, aren't we going to the Poconos this weekend?
No, that's next week.
I used to always think about. I was always fascinated with the idea that they would do a caricature of Steinbrenner all those years, kind of making fun of him, doing Larry David, just seeing the back of his head and being outlandish and funny. They finally invite him on it. They script it, they shoot it, and they cut his scenes before the final airing.
Yeah.
Like, imagine the gall of making fun of a guy for years, finally inviting him, shooting it, going through rehearsals and everything, and then you cut the scenes before it airs. Like, I think about that a lot.
Yeah, that was disappointing. It makes me think of like today. Mayor Jenkins died, and he was a part of that show.
Right. Yeah.
Non-fat yoga. Like he easily could have been on the episode as well. Obviously, if he won the election, if it wasn't for Lloyd Braun, right? So it's funny. Like you mentioned episodes. Like you mentioned your buddy growing up. Like you kind of reference like Seinfeld's all about the lines, right? And even like you mentioned the silence, right? Of them rewinding the tape. But like, what are some of your favorite lines that just like religiously you say and people may get or may not, right? Like tippy toe lemon tree, like we'll say that a lot. Or I always mention whenever I'm going to the airport, I'll mention JFK, Honolulu, like, and usually it goes over people's heads, which is fine, but there's always those couple lines that just always resonate. What are some of those of yours?
I say them so much, it's actually a little tough. Sorry about that. It's actually a little tough to just pull it off the cuff like that. There are some I know I say a lot, like, what is this, Amateur Hour? Which, of course, is from the Merv Griffin episode. I hate to bring that up again. Two animal acts on the same set. What is this, Amateur Hour? But I literally say them so often. I don't know if I have a go-to one or not. I like to say the George line in the pothole episode when he's pretending they're doing the hard labor fantasy camp, and the guy looks at him, is this about money? Yeah, it's about money.
That guy's a great delivery of that line.
Yeah.
We talked about that when we went over that podcast.
Yeah, it's about
It's
money.
one line and he nails it.
Yeah, there's some like that. I don't know if I could pull them off the cuff like this. I think I say them so often. It's kind of tough to. I'm a little disappointed in myself.
No. Well, it's funny.
It's
like
fine.
you're like analytics background and obviously doing stuff with the NFL and the Eagles. Like, do you? And it sounds like you've done a lot of history on Seinfeld, like looking up different things. Like, do you break down? Do you break down episodes like, wow, this director did that, this writer wrote this?
No, not that deep. I know it like kind of alludes that my mind is a very shred everything apart type of guy. It's really just the football stuff. And I'm just so passionate about Seinfeld. I don't have these conversations with anybody about Seinfeld. Well, I'll say lines and things like that and we'll watch. But I was excited that somebody wants to talk nuts and bolts of Seinfeld. I'm ready to talk nuts and bolts of Seinfeld. But no, I never really dig in too much of being like analytic of writers or directors or, decisions on the show. I look at things maybe a little bit different, maybe a little more critical, not taking things just for face value on stuff like, explaining the endings of shows and things like that, or endings of storylines. But I'm probably alluding to being a little more analytic than I am.
Yeah,
No, I think a good fan is critical, right? Like we think it's the best comedy ever, right? Like the TV Guide says, but I think when you analyze every show and go through every season, you're gonna find some gaps.
Right. Are you guys? Do you guys watch Comedians in Cars?
Yes. Yeah. And Curb. That a lot of times we get asked about Curb. We'll throw that out there to you then. Which Comedians in Cars or Curb episodes kind of strike you? I'm assuming you're fans of both, or?
Oh yeah. So Comedians in Cars, I love the format. I love that's a little bit of Top Gear mixed in with just two comedians, shooting the shit type of thing. Loved, the Steve Harvey episode. I love seeing him go with Carl Reiner and Mel Brooks, just being regular guys eating a meal, freaking in their pajamas in the basement. Will Ferrell, the fact Barack Obama went on was a great episode. Anytime he is Julia and people like that, I absolutely love. But I didn't like Curb Your Enthusiasm for a long time. I felt it was very similar to the tone of Seinfeld, but it wasn't Seinfeld. And I was just so passionate about Seinfeld. I felt like it was trying to have that narrative and that feel to it, but it wasn't it until the reunion season where they brought all the Seinfeld characters back. I think it was Curb season 7. I watched that full season as it came out, loved it, then went back and appreciated Curb from the start. But for those first 5-6 seasons, I really wasn't a watcher of Curb and really didn't give it much time or attention.
Yeah, I brought it up to James Altucher when we had him on. I think the reason why I'm bigger with Seinfeld than with Curb, although I do like Curb, that I think it got a little played out in my mind towards the end for some of the reasons you just mentioned, and the fact that it kind of just, how many times can you tell the same story with Larry getting in trouble with people that misbehaving. But the real reason I didn't like Curb as much is because it's not written, it's not scripted, right. So you don't have the genius of the writing, which you talked about at the top of the show about, who wrote that line, who picked out that exact line. That's writing, good writing. That's why Seinfeld's so good. And
it's just getting from A to B in the storyline, however you want to.
Exactly. Curb just let the actors do it. And if they said a funny line, but otherwise it was just the premise was what was funny, but there's no joke in between. There's no writing in between. There's no rewinding a tape in between, whatever it might be. So that was kind of the difference, I thought, between the two. But Comedians in Cars is always good to hear people. I love the inside baseball talk that they do and things like that.
Oh yeah.
So what? While we're kind of just diving a little bit deeper, I know Harry mentioned lines. We got your secondary characters. What is your? You kind of touched on it, but do you have a top 5, or do you have your favorite season? Maybe give us your top 5. I don't know if you thought about it before you came on, but we'll give you,
Yeah, well, my number 1 has always been Serenity Now. I love when Jerry decides to get emotional for the first time and having feelings. I think that's just a really clever episode. It's when George sells the computers and Kramer sets up the screen door, and he's going through his emotions with the neighborhood kids and stuff. I just love that whole episode. It's so many of the late ones. I'm trying to see if there's something, the betrayal so unique to do the backwards episode at that time. And then there's little things like digging into the betrayal and where that came from, and the Shakespearean connection to things, and all the references throughout the show to like the OJ trial and JFK, and the recurring stuff is so interesting. But love the Frogger episode late. Love the Puerto Rican Day Parade one late, even though that one really wasn't in the syndication lineup for a long time because of the controversy of burning the flag. I love the Peephole and the Strongbox and the Wizard and the Slicer, the dealership episode. The dealership doesn't get the same love as the Chinese food store or the parking garage that it should. It's the same static setting type of show. You
might have to get into this a little bit.
I know Kramer goes for the test drive with the guy, but the show is such a genius one-setting plot in going through all the dynamics of the dealership. It's a brilliant episode.
Yeah, but let's dive into this just a little bit, because I'd like to know, George in that episode is so over the top. That doesn't bother you at all.
He is very theatrical. Yeah, he is theatrical with it, and Yeah, he was probably a little out of character there, and the whole, the candy machine feud and things like that. I think he had to play to like the drub character of that mechanic that potentially stole, and how monotone and dry he was. I think George had to kind of lift up the theatrics on his side.
Fair enough. Yeah, I mean, I personally like the Kramer scene more in that episode when he just says to the guy, "That's a crazy thing to say," and me and that other guy, we went farther than anyone else. Like, I like that scene. We went over it when we got
Just the subtlety at the very end.
Partner did not
to sit back in the chair to say, "All right, I'll think about it."
Ben,
after going through all that, like
I don't. If a Seinfeld show comes on TBS, whatever, I rarely skip it. If the dealership comes on, I don't watch. That's
interesting. Okay.
He's strong.
It's just not the essence of the show. Like George, I don't know. Like I just didn't laugh. I don't know what it was.
The subtle references to Arby's and David Puddy. We went out to lunch. Where'd you go? Arby's. I had the roast beef.
Yeah, listen, we get into Puddy as well. Like, in my opinion, that's, again, for me.
Some people don't think Puddy should have that big of a role in any episode. Kind of it almost like dilutes his side character presence.
Yeah. That's our feeling.
And that's what touches on your piece earlier about like relationship humor. Like Elaine should have a one and done boyfriend. He shouldn't be back, But I get I know what they were trying to do. I get it. And the ratings didn't lie. So what the hell do I know? But yeah, I think it's. So those are pretty much like your top five, essentially.
Yeah, I'm a sucker for the later episodes for sure. There's a couple earlier ones that I don't really care for. Or maybe
which ones don't? We like to say that too. What are your kind of least favorite? I know you touched on the subway. Anything else?
That's a good question. Off the top of my head, it's going to be all the earlier episode ones. I don't love the puffy shirt. I don't love the red dot or the Pez dispenser one.
Wow, this is crazy. I mean, this is why the show's so good. The red dot's our second favorite of all time.
Yeah, I didn't love the woman actress choice on the Pez dispenser. She drove me crazy.
George's girl.
Yeah.
See, that was her. I thought that was her. I thought she was good. That was her kind of a charm. She was supposed to be like.
I love the dog episode where he has to take care of the dog from the drunk guy in the plane. Then that doesn't show back up. That one's pretty good.
Powerful.
Yeah.
the reason I like the Pez dispenser girl, I think she was more relatable for George. Like George getting all these hot girls at the end just didn't do it for me.
Yeah. The alternate side episode with the cars is always good.
Top 5 for us, my man. Top 5.
That one's really good. I love the character of what was the guy's name?
Moffat?
Yes. That was that George took over as his car parking duties.
Sid, yes.
Sid, yeah.
I never put my pants on. You ready to put your pants on?
My question to you is, who's putting your pants on?
Oh, Ben, no, this is why it's so great to talk about Seinfeld.
I got stuff like this all over the place. I got lines that bother me, like in the Pam episode, the scrunchie, and Newman gives Kramer the poem to say.
Yes.
And he says it's from an unnamed 20th century whatever. And then she then asks, oh, what's his name? Newman. I don't understand that line of thinking there. She says it's an unnamed poet, and he says, what's his name? And he says Newman. Like nice little lines like that throughout that bother me. Like,
well, that's good. It sounds like a lot does bother you.
I like that. Oh, yeah. Let's touch a little bit more on that if you got a minute. What else? Because I like that kind of thing. We don't like that, and our last guest didn't like it either. The fact that there's so many car driving in the show, and they're in New York City.
Yeah,
they're driving cars like that's
what it's all about, though. Right. Just a city feel to it.
Yeah. So
I'm a sucker, just like Serenity Now. I love the Visa episode. That's probably one of the earlier ones I like because I like when he's not himself. So Serenity Now, he's all emotional. The Visa episode, George wants him to not be funny. So he has to say happy birthday to George's girlfriend, and he does it very monotone and dry. And it's just so not Seinfeld. It's hilarious. So anytime.
What about the Kenny Rogers when he becomes Kramer?
Yeah, that one's great too. Yep. Yeah, that's what was that, season 6 or 7 there?
Kenny Rogers was 7, yeah, I believe.
Yeah. And
but
little Jerry, the cockfighting, and the slicer one. Oh man.
You like the slicer one?
Chicken roaster was 8.
Chicken roaster.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like the slicer one. I thought that was different.
Well, that's a Kramer.
Well, you don't know how to use it. Oh, I was say, where's the on-off switch? Right there.
Yeah, that's a Kramer Elaine. A Kramer Elaine is an interesting combo. The George Elaines are always pretty funny too because he's afraid of her. He mentions that a couple of times.
Right.
So Ben, you mentioned like some other shows you're into, like News Radio, which Sharon's also helped direct, Friends. You don't put those in the same category.
No,
do you?
No, not at all. Yeah. I'm not as passionate about any other comedy really. Trying to think if there's one that even comes close. I, definitely had an appreciation for Always Sunny in the 2000s.
They did a Seinfeld spoof, right? An episode where they did,
I
like,
believe
contest?
so, and I think I actually fell off a little bit watching. I think that was in the later episodes. I did see a promo where they're all dressed up like the Seinfeld characters. I don't think I saw that episode though.
Well, the thing about that show, as we're touching on that, is they were different. Like, not many shows come along. That's why it struck my mind when it first started.
I think on the back of season 1 DVD, it says on there the best 3 guys and a girl since Seinfeld or something like that. It references Seinfeld on the back of the DVD of season 1.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Who, when I think about the consistency of the show of one character, for my money, seasons 1 through 9, it's Jerry, just because I see so many fluctuations in the other characters. Of the 4, who do you relate to, and then who do you see as the most consistent the whole way? Like, who do you enjoy the most?
Yeah, I would say I relate to Jerry the most. Just his dryness, his ability to kind of say sarcastic lines in a very monotone way. I'm the guy that, has something funny to say at the funeral type of guy. I'm always thinking in terms of observational humor. When I think about this a lot when in the Comedians in Cars episode with Steve Harvey, and they talk about when tragedy strikes, we already have the jokes. We just need to know when to release them at the right time. I'm the same way. When something like happens like that or sensitive, I already have the jokes. And now it's just waiting for society to kind of catch up and be able to take the joke. It's the same way as Seinfeld thinking. And I also like some of those later episodes because of the cold opens. And that those opens were so bizarre, so bizarrely written, and so having nothing to do with anything.
Who's the Dutch?
Yeah, right.
Who's Holland, that one?
Yes, yeah. They're hilarious. Whether it's Kramer trying to finish the meal before they walk into the store at the one point, or him and Jerry talking about the story of Cain and Abel.
Yeah.
Some of them are literally the deepest Seinfeld watchers don't have a good grasp of them because they don't have anything to do with the episode. So it's the cold open and then the whole show. So a lot of times I have to go back and watch the cold open by itself. So like particularly that Cain and Abel one, when you're done watching it, go watch that Seinfeld Cain and Abel Explained. It is so bizarre. I need to know who came up with those lines.
The Mustache too is that one of those cold opens. It's funny. It's great you mentioned that because we brought that up because we our first 20 episodes of this podcast, we went, like I said, we went through every single episode of the show. And I noticed those later seasons, the cold opens were just these random conversations that just kind of had no, non sequiturs. They were really good though. Awesome. Got anything, Wire?
No, man, Ben, we appreciate the time.
Yeah, this was great, man. We're always up for talking Seinfeld.
Great to talk to a huge Seinfeld fan like yourself. I'm just curious, do you ever splice some humor into your NFL analysis?
I like to keep my worlds apart.
But we don't want worlds colliding.
I try to every now and then, and maybe my film articles, I'll by default just have something Seinfeld related that I won't explain, but I'll just put it in there, and usually one person will catch it, and the 3 that read the article. But
well, the one person who's been catching it is Jerry himself, so that's awesome.
Have you guys caught him in person doing stand-up at all?
I did. Yeah, I actually saw him in Scranton, sort of near neck of the woods.
Oh, very nice.
Yeah, I drove up there to see him. I also saw Larry David's Broadway play, Fish in the Dark, and when it was on Broadway.
I saw the Long Story Short, the one that Seinfeld directed for Colin Quinn.
Yeah.
I saw that one a couple years ago, and I saw him do stand-up once in Portland, Maine. Although all I wanted to do is get a picture with him, so I staked out where he goes in about an hour before the show. shows up like 5 minutes before. I say, hey, can I get a picture? And he says, I'm running behind. Meet me here after. I'll take a picture with you after. And I yelled to him. I said, that's fine as long as you don't get all Buddy Rich on me. And he stopped before he walked in. And I thought he was going to turn and say something to me. And he didn't. But that I know he's known Buddy Rich is kind of very close to his heart. And just for anybody listening that doesn't know, he was a musician that would then go and rip the band on the tour bus after the shows. And they started recording those rippings. And a lot of those recordings have worked their way into the show. Like, I'll take you outside and show you what it's like. Or you'll see what it's like up there without all the assistants. I know that's close to his heart. So I said, don't get all Buddy Rich on me. And I tried to find him after the show and he left. But
so you never got the picture.
never got the photo, and I'm gonna bring it up the second I see him.
Oh, Harold's got a Larry David story.
Well,
Similar
listen,
to that.
you retweet this episode and ask for the picture. Maybe he'll bite. Well, Ben,
This was great, Ben.
we appreciate the time and looking forward to catching up down the road.
Yeah, thank
Absolutely.
you so much.
Thanks for having me
This
on,
was
guys.
awesome.
A lot of fun.
This was cool.
Thanks,
Thank you,
man.
man. Appreciate it.